You're listening to Luke's English Podcast. For more information, visit teacherluke.co.uk. Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the world. I hope you're doing all right, in both body and mind at this particular moment in time. Welcome to this new episode of my podcast, which is here to help you develop your English skills simply by listening to some authentic, unscripted and spontaneous conversation, because we know that regular exposure to spoken English is vital in the learning process. And if listening to this can just keep you company for a while too, then that is an added bonus. In this episode, you're going to hear a chat with Cara Leopold, an English teacher from the UK, currently living on lockdown in the east of France. Cara has been on this podcast before, 2 times, as you may remember. The first time was back in episode 523, in which we talked about learning English with films and TV shows. Then, more recently, we talked in episode 618 about the climate crisis. This time, you can hear us chatting about social distancing and being on lockdown during the current coronavirus pandemic, and some more comments about how to improve your English during this period at home using TV series and films. Yes, there is quite a lot of talking here about the coronavirus. I hope you're not completely fed up with this topic now. As I've said before, I don't plan to talk about it too much, but I do still want to address the subject a bit because it's just on our minds so much, and if I ignored it completely, it would just end up being the elephant in the room. So we're going to talk about it today in this episode. Here's a quick rundown of the main points that came up in this conversation, just to help you understand what's going on. First, we talk about the complex feelings and emotions that we're experiencing during this COVID-19 lockdown, including things like anger, guilt, compassion, empathy, helplessness, and general feelings of cognitive dissonance as we try to make sense of what's going on in the world at the moment. Then we talk about trying to balance the seriousness of the situation with your general mental health on a daily basis, weighing up the positives and negatives of being stuck inside while the TV news reports on serious events going on around the world every day. We talk about how much people are following the lockdown rules in our local areas and the vagueness of government positions on those lockdown rules in both France and the UK. We speculate about Boris Johnson's cavalier attitude towards social distancing. Now, if you describe someone or something as cavalier, it means you're basically criticising them for being a bit careless, being a bit reckless, or not really taking the situation seriously enough. So we talk about Boris Johnson's cavalier attitude a few weeks ago, which resulted in him personally catching the virus, which is obviously a pity. More than a pity, it's potentially a tragedy, but he seems to be doing okay according to the news reports. Breaking news at time of recording, he is now out of intensive care. So you may know that Boris Johnson did get the coronavirus. He then went to intensive care, ICU, an intensive care unit. Intensive care is basically when someone is given like really sort of drastic medical attention, which suggested that he was seriously ill. So everyone was very concerned that our Prime Minister might even fall victim to this virus in the worst possible way. But he's now out of intensive care, which seems to be a good sign for his health, even though I expect it might have been touch and go for a while. Of course, we wish him well, and we wish anyone else who is suffering at this time all the best. But anyway, we speculate about his attitude, which may have led him to get the virus. We also discussed the challenge of trying to work out a moral position on all of this, specifically several approaches to dealing with the crisis. Those approaches being social distancing on one hand and the concept of herd immunity on the other hand. I talked about herd immunity with my dad on the podcast several episodes ago, and I think I may have defined it in a recent episode too. Anyway, social distancing versus herd immunity. We chat also about managing daily life at home with a 2-year-old child in my case, and what happens when I leave my daughter unattended for more than 10 minutes. Then we turn our attention to you and your English and how you can use online content like TV series and films, for example on Netflix or maybe on other places like openculture.com. So we talk about how you can use content on those platforms to improve your English at home during the lockdown period, and in fact at any other time. We did cover quite a lot of that kind of advice in episode 523, and you'll find the link on the page for the episode for episode 523, and also in the archive, of course. So we did cover a lot of that advice in that episode, but I will sum up the main bits of advice that we made at the end of this one. Well, I say at the end of this one, I think I'm going to do a summary of advice about learning English with TV shows and films and stuff in the next episode. But we talk about it a little bit in the sort of later part of this episode. So anyway, stay tuned for more comments about how you can use TV series and films to improve your English nearer the end of the chat and also in the next episode. By the way, Cara's last episode was transcribed by the Orion Transcription team. That was episode 619. So that was transcribed fully by the Orion Transcription team. You can always find all the details of the transcription project and stuff on the website. Just go to transcripts in the menu. Anyway, according to the team, it was quite tough. It was quite a tough, difficult transcribing job, partly due to the sound quality from Cara's side of the conversation. I think that she might have been in an echoey room, a room with lots of echoes, or maybe a lot of reverb or something. Anyway, she may have been in a room that caused the sound to bounce around, a room with lots of flat surfaces like a kitchen or something. Maybe she was in her kitchen, and that caused her voice to be a bit difficult to hear. So we had reports from the transcription team that it was difficult to understand what she was saying because of that. So this time, Cara made a special effort to create better recording conditions. In fact, for the whole conversation, she was in a cupboard, surrounded by coats. So she climbed inside a cupboard to record this conversation. The point being, she was doing her best to get good quality sound, and hopefully she will be a bit clearer this time. In any case, though, if she's not completely clear, it's still good practice, isn't it? Because, as we know, I've said it many times before, it's very good practice for you to hear or for you to listen to English being spoken in less than perfect conditions. Because, you know, let's be honest, when you're using English, you might be doing it in a conference call or over the telephone or on Zoom or something where people might not be using really good recording equipment. So it's good practice for you to listen in imperfect conditions. But hopefully she will be clearer this time. I mean, she's in a cupboard, for goodness sake. So I'd like to say thank you to Cara for climbing inside a cupboard to record this episode. I would like to, just before we start, I'd like to clarify a couple of reference points, a couple of things that you will hear being said in the conversation, particularly in the opening minutes of the conversation. And I'd like to clarify those things just to help you follow what we're saying. So here are some things you'll hear being mentioned. So the phrase, like an episode of Black Mirror. It's like an episode of Black Mirror. This is a phrase that people are using these days. So Black Mirror is a TV show which many of you will have seen. It's on Netflix, actually, and if you haven't seen it and you've got Netflix, then it's one of the shows that I do recommend. But anyway, Black Mirror is a TV show which many of you will have seen, but also plenty of you won't know about it. So episodes of Black Mirror typically involve some kind of scary situation, like perhaps a post-apocalyptic world or a world in which certain technology has completely changed our everyday lives. That's kind of the concept behind episodes of Black Mirror. It's kind of like living in a world that is maybe set just in the near future, in which things are a bit scary and twisted because perhaps new technology has changed things, or maybe people are living in a world in which some kind of scary events have happened. So it could be usually it's because technology has completely changed our everyday lives and not for the better. Or it could be about life in the context of an environmental or economic crisis or something like that. But basically, the phrase "like an episode of Black Mirror" has become a common phrase meaning like we are living in a scary version of the future or something. So this coronavirus situation is a bit like an episode of Black Mirror. So that's kind of what that means. You'll also hear references to a couple of TV channels that you might not know about. There's France 3, and also BFM. Now, these are news stations which you get on TV in France, so France 3 and BFM. Also, there's Canal+, which is a TV station, or also an online platform, a bit like Netflix, but in France. So it's a TV station or online platform which you have to pay for in France. Also, I've already mentioned it, but there's ICU, which is the intensive care unit. That's where people go when they need like very drastic medical attention. And also, I mean, there's loads of other things I could mention at the beginning, which I won't, because we need to just get started. But another one would be helicopter parenting. So if you are a helicopter parent, it means you're constantly like hovering over your child, constantly monitoring exactly what they're doing. It's a negative term. If you're described as a helicopter parent, or if you are helicopter parenting, it means that you're constantly there, always sort of micromanaging everything your child is doing, and you never give your child space to maybe get things wrong, or maybe have little accidents and things. It's a tricky thing being a parent, especially when you've got a little child. And the concept of being a helicopter parent is considered to be a bad thing. That you've got to, even if you're worried about the safety of your child, you've got to kind of let them have some space to kind of go out and explore and maybe fall over sometimes and things like that. So we are constantly trying not to be helicopter parents. So anyway, that's the concept of a helicopter parent. As I said, there are plenty of other reference points and bits of language that I could explain now and clarify, but actually I think it's best to just let you listen to the conversation and simply try to follow everything. Notice things as you go, like bits of language. Work them out from context if you can, and just try to find things that you can relate to personally, but in English, of course. Okay? Right. So, without any further ado, let's now listen to my conversation with Cara, and here we go. Hello, Cara. How are you?
Hello, Luke. Yeah, I'm all right. I'm having quite a good day today, on the whole. What about you, like, specifically today?
Today?
Is this like a good day?
Well, I mean, despite the fact we've got this really weird, slightly scary global pandemic, it's like being in an episode of Black Mirror or in some kind of dystopian science fiction film. Despite that general context, personally, me today, I'm having a good day. The weather is nice, which helps. It's really sunny and warm, and I've spent most of the day with my daughter, so I've been kind of sharing that with my wife. So some days I'm with our daughter in the morning until about sort of nap time, actually, until about 3, and then my wife takes over. So I spent, most of the morning and some of the afternoon with my daughter, which is like, on one hand, intensely stressful and it's hard to explain really, but just, the experience of, trying to be with a child she's about 2 years old now, and just the moment by moment sort of managing things, which can be it can be a bit stressful, but then on the other hand, it's totally wonderful and amazing because she's at this really cool age where she's starting to talk, and she kind of like is coming online in some ways. I mean, not she's not on the internet. I mean, you know what I mean. That her personality is really starting to kick in, and she's becoming a lot more intelligent. She's able to communicate with us more, and it's amazing. So yeah, that basically, I've kind of been living in a bubble, looking after my daughter mainly. And today's been a good day. We've got a little balcony here where we live in Paris. So luckily a little bit of outside space. And so we spent a little bit of time on the balcony. She's got like a little bathtub that we used to, give her a bath. And so I took the bathtub onto the balcony, filled it with water, and she was like playing around, splashing around on the balcony. So good fun today. Yeah.
Yeah, that does sound good. I'm almost like, could I do that on my balcony? But that would be weird because I'm not a 2-year-old.
Well, you could, put your feet in a bowl of cold water or something. That's quite pleasant. I did that. She was splashing around in the water, and she was like, "Daddy, feet." And so it was like, "Oh, shall I put my feet in?" Okay. And so she encouraged me to put my feet in. So I rolled up my trouser legs and put my feet in, and it was really nice. And we were splashing around, splashing each other. So yeah, a little bowl of water. You could put your feet in the water and just kind of cool down. It's quite nice.
Yeah, I can maybe do that. It's quite warm here too.
Whereabouts are you again? Just tell us the name of.
I am in. It's hard to pronounce if you're an English speaker. I'm in Besançon, which is, let me think. It's like an hour east of Dijon and about an hour and a half west of Lausanne in Switzerland.
Yeah, so it's in France, just sort of on the way to Switzerland.
Yeah, definitely about an hour from the border, and nobody knows where it is, and people mix it up with Briançon, which is another town further south in the sort of in the Alps. But that's not where this is. This is Besançon.
Okay.
So yeah.
How's your day?
Yeah.
How's your day going? Like mine.
Today's been like, do you know what? It's just kind of like a normal Friday in the sense, like, just if you just forget about the whole, like you said, the Black Mirror episode that you're sort of living in. Like, it's just like a normal Friday in that I'm tired because it's Friday afternoon, the end of the day. But I actually feel fairly serene today. I don't know if that's like the right serene, just like I'm dealing with it okay today.
Yeah, it's weird that obviously there's no question this is like a really bad thing that's going on, and the not just right now, but the consequences of it are going to be severe, and it's hard not to kind of get a bit depressed by it. But then on the other hand, some days are great. I mean, there are some really nice things going on, like the fact that, I mean, Paris, where I live, it's so much quieter, and also the pollution has dropped. You know, the quality of the air has improved a lot, and so just moment by moment, when you kind of manage to forget about what's going on in the world, actually it's very pleasant, weirdly.
Yeah, and I think I had been feeling a lot of guilt recently. So I've gone through different emotions in different weeks and on different days, you know. So in the beginning, I was quite angry.
Why?
You know,
angry for what reason?
I was kind of angry at the government, very angry about the how things were handled. This issue of not having enough masks for healthcare workers, and just all that awful situation. So I was quite angry about that, and then I was upset and worried I started thinking about different situations, like what if you're stuck in your house with an abuser? What if you're in a tiny apartment with loads of kids? What if you're going to run out of money? You know, I was thinking about all the, you know, and just the whole fact that like this was rushed in so quickly. Yes. I think it relies an awful lot on the goodwill of people, because really what they're asking a lot of us, like, you know, this is, I mean, it sounds ridiculous to say that because you just got to stay in your house. Like, it's not rocket science. It's just sit on your bum in your house. But at the same time, like, when you start to think of all the consequences, you're like, actually, this isn't so simple for everybody. And I've got quite fed up of watching, like, sometimes we put on France 3, I think it's France 3 at lunchtime, 1 p.m. And they're trying to do, like, kind of light-hearted news. And they would, like, go and visit people who, I don't know if they're journalists or just normal people, who'd be like, here's how my confinement is going. I've got a garden, and I've got a big terrace and this and that, and it's just like, what are all these smug people like, you know, why not do some reporting on people in like tough circumstances anyway, whose circumstances have just got tougher, because of all this, like, I don't want to see smug people and all these people who are like, I've got loads of me time now. It's like, what? I'm working. I have to work. I have a business. Like, I'm not going to stop, Yeah,
well, so, I feel like sometimes these TV stations feel like they're programming. They want to be able to continue doing this kind of light aspirational stuff, and so they're like finding that angle during this lockdown, because they're like, we can't just change our whole outlook on everything.
We're not suddenly going to become social justice warriors or something. So we're just going to pretend like,
I guess so.
Everybody's middle class and has a house with a garden and everybody's doing great.
I know. It's pretty messed up. I actually we don't have a TV at the moment. So I managed to avoid seeing all of that stuff. Sometimes we switch on the news on a computer just to see the headlines. We'll put BFM on or something like that. Right. And I find watching the news, it's just, oh my God, it's just so dramatic. Like the music that they use, the whole tone of it is like, I mean, we know this about news, and it's, there's comedy shows taking the piss out of the news and stuff, but and not just in France, in the UK and America and everything. But I mean, sometimes I just feel like, guys, can you tone it down a little bit? Because it's like, and then it's like the music from a kind of, it's like the music from an action film. So I'm going to try and recreate what it's like. I need another pencil here. I need to recreate the sound of this news music. So online, what they do is they have the headlines, and then they for some reason they do a loop of dramatic images with dramatic music going on at the same time. Okay, I found my pencil. So in action movies, sometimes you get Okay, this isn't work because the pencils don't sound right. This is a disaster. This isn't working at all. But anyway, it sounds like tense action movie music. When there's like a scene where tense stuff is going to happen, and you get these sticks going.
Yeah, like Die Hard is going to kick the door down.
Right, and it sounds like a clock. It sounds kind of like a clock. I will. What I'll do, right? I know exactly which scene from a film to
get that from.
Yeah, to use as an example, and I'll put some into the track to demonstrate.
You should do it when you do the intro to the episode.
Well, I'll put it in now. I'll put it in now so people don't think I'm a complete madman. There is. I am actually talking about a thing. But this
you didn't just make it up in your head.
No. So the music on the news is like that. So they show you the headlines and some reporting, and then there's maybe 10 minutes where probably on the TV they're showing you other stuff, but online they just have like this it's the fucking news, it's really scary, like the same music they use to keep the tension up in a film, they're using that on the news, and it's like with a montage of dramatic images, and it's like, guys, like, you're really panicking everyone so much. Like, tell us the information, but don't like amp it all up, like you're raising everyone's blood pressure like that. So anyway,
I think like we know it's bad, isn't it? Like, again, I don't want to sound like, you said this last time when we did the climate episode, that we maybe sounded a bit glib at some point. I don't want to sound like that either. This is awful, obviously. Like, we all know that, so you don't need to like rub it in, and I mean, they could put something, I don't know what, but I'm also thinking, recently I've been thinking about journalists, and I'm sure it's not good for journalists who are reporting on this day in, day out. Like, I'm sure it's not good for their mental health either.
Right.
I was just thinking about like the people that manage the Guardian live blog, which is quite a stress vortex.
Yes.
That I had been going on a lot earlier in the year. I had been following the story from January because I'd got into this bad habit of looking at the Guardian in the morning in bed. And just, I was getting caught up in the drama of it. So I was like, I actually need to stop. because it's not right what I'm doing. And that was before it was really affecting us. But I was looking on in horror at what was happening in China, and then it coming to Italy, and then yeah. But
I mean, it can be really frightening and stressful. Like, so I think there's a certain amount of balance that we've got to try and strike, but it's really hard to know how to make that balance. But the balance I'm talking about is between being informed and taking this seriously, and it is definitely a serious situation, and we do need to be as informed as possible on one side, but on the other side, kind of getting really caught up in all of that, and it starts to dominate your every waking moment, and it can actually make you feel really, really bad. It can be counterproductive to be so glued to Twitter, which can become a kind of an echo chamber. But like just getting caught up in that can be a little bit, it can be a bit bad for your mental health. So it's kind of like the balance between, getting the right information and knowing what's going on and trying to make the right decisions with trying not to get carried away with it all and trying not to get overwhelmed. But so, we were talking about your mental health and how this feels. You said sort of earlier on, like a few weeks ago, maybe your primary feeling was one of anger, right? I
was quite angry in the beginning. And then I've also been thinking a lot about friends and family who are in worse situations. And I don't know, just there's not that much you can do. So it's actually quite hard for me. I suppose it's a reminder that I'm an empathetic person who cares about others, but I realized I was also sort of, carrying the weight of, so-and-so's in this situation, and what about this? And so there's been sort of feeling bad for others, and then maybe feeling a bit guilty about certain things. Because, there's lots of good things in my situation at the moment, actually, because, I don't know, we've got balconies, we don't have kids. I really feel for anybody who has kids. We're both still working, both got money coming in. Like, there's lots of positives. So sometimes it's kind of like you feel bad. And also I felt really exhausted after the first week, I think. I have periods where I feel very exhausted, and I'm kind of like, what right have you got? Have you just done a 24-hour shift in the ICU? No, so...
so that kind of guilt.
The guilt, it together, woman. Yeah.
The guilt.
Like, how dare you?
That if you suffer in any way in this situation, you feel guilty because you suddenly think, well, comparatively speaking, my life is really easy and great compared to
so I should be like dancing for joy every moment, but it's not that simple. And actually, something that helped me was seeing there was a good article in the Harvard Business Review about grief, and it said that even if you haven't lost someone, we're all grieving at the moment. So that explains the emotions you're feeling, and also the exhaustion is to do with like the fact you just can't get away from the situation.
Right.
So like normally, your nervous response is you can fight something or you can run away, but right now you can't do either of those things. And it sounds really strange to be not complaining, but, finding it difficult to just be stuck inside. But it is difficult to suddenly have all your freedoms removed and to have all this uncertainty. And so I think it's normal to feel lots of different things and conflicting emotions. But
there is a certain amount of relativism involved, in the sense that obviously we all have like different experiences. There are always some people who are suffering more than us, but somehow when your situation changes, we still have we still suffer from it in some way, even though we feel we shouldn't. It's really difficult, isn't it? It's really complicated because that feeling of guilt, because the guilt really is it's an expression of your sense of responsibility and your sense of empathy towards the other people who are suffering, but you also feel powerless because you feel like other people have got it much worse than me, but like, what can I do about it? And so you kind of compensate for your lack of agency by just feeling guilty or feeling bad, beating yourself up.
which isn't actually that useful either. And actually, the best resource I've found on that is Brene Brown, famous vulnerability researcher. I think that's how she described herself. She has started a new podcast called Unlocking Us, and she did a brilliant episode where she talked about comparative suffering, and she went into this. And it was just a reminder to like not let your brain do that thing like, oh, you haven't worked in the ICU 24 hours straight with no mask, but actually to say like, I am having difficult emotions, and let them come up and not get into that comparison game. Because if you just suppress your emotions, then, you're going to have some kind of meltdown at some point, and then you won't be able to be there for the people who need you more,
Right.
So I'm trying to look at it that way. And I think I wasn't letting myself fully feel all my, my emotions. And so I was like, that podcast really helped. I was like crying while I was listening to that podcast, because I was like, oh yeah, I've been doing this, and now I feel like I have permission to be a bit nicer to myself. So
yeah, we do have to kind of go easy on ourselves a bit, I think.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. So what's it like up there in how do I pronounce the town again? I did have it. I had the town here on my Google Maps, but I've since lost it.
It's hard to pronounce.
Besançon?
Not bad. Besançon. Oh, that was really good. That second time.
Besançon.
Oh wow, you'd be allowed to live here with that pronunciation of it.
Really do. Is it? Yeah, you have to say it correctly for the locals to accept you. Is that right?
To accept you, yeah. Otherwise, like, no.
No, he pronounced the vowel wrong. Get out.
Get out. You can't live here.
Besançon. So what's it like over there in Besançon then at the moment?
Well, I don't see much because I'm in my flat most of the time. So I think since the lockdown started, I can actually count like on one hand the number of times I've been out. So Monday, March 16th was the last time I went out for a walk.
Wow, that's 3 weeks ago.
I know. My partner hasn't been out since the 17th of March. Like, not been out of the apartment. Only he's been to the balcony, he's been to take the bins out, and that's it.
Wow.
That's some heroic staying inside, isn't it?
What are you doing in terms of like getting food and stuff?
So I'm coming to that. So the first week I went to pick up a grocery delivery, because what I do for groceries, not for everything, but for a lot of things, I do this thing called locavor.fr if you're interested. So it's basically like you order your food online, and it's all local producers. So it's all food from the Franche-Comté region. That's the region we're in. And then on a Thursday evening, you go and pick it up. And the pickup is basically not too far from my house. So I had already placed an order, and I went and got that the first week. And then 2 weeks later, I got another order. So I haven't been out since last Thursday when I went to pick up that order.
Wow, that's impressive. I have to say that it's very impressive.
But we had my partner's mother left a load of food in our garage, which was very nice, just before the lockdown. And we were annoyed at her for going out, but it has helped us because she left like loads of pasta and coffee and just like store cupboard things. And I had also been stocking up kind of before that, not like going crazy, just buying a bit more food every time. Coming back to the whole thing, I don't go out much. I see people in the street from the balcony. And sometimes I get the impression that some people are having what we're calling like a Club Med confinement. Okay. So Club Med, so it's just people strolling around the street, quite the thing. I know you're allowed out for your like 20 minutes exercise or whatever, but I don't know. We think some people are maybe taking the mick a little bit.
Taking the mick.
Yeah. And also, are you allowed to go out in twos? Because I didn't think you were. Like, I thought you had to go out on your own. I'm a bit confused.
To be honest, I don't know. I don't really know. I think you are allowed to go out in twos, but I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of living in a bubble, as I've said. And
do you want me to actually? I have got the government website.
Yeah, we should check, but
because
I mean, it's hard to know. I don't want to start sort of throwing around criticisms of this and that and of other people and the government.
I totally agree. I'm trying to be very compassionate.
Yeah.
Even if I'm a bit like, that person's a bit of a chancer, you know. It's
a hard balance to strike. And okay, so the hard fact of the matter is that in order to try to prevent the spread of the virus, we must isolate ourselves and distance ourselves from others. And so the government has introduced measures to try to impose this. And the measures are basically, you know, you must stay in your homes, but you're allowed. But then they have to make certain concessions, like you're allowed to go out if you have a member of your family who you have to see, for example, an older relative who requires help or whatever. So you're allowed to go out for that. In that case, you're allowed to go out to get essential shopping items, to do basic essential shopping. You're allowed to go out. So, you know, from a legal point of view, what does that mean? You can, you know, these have to be defined terms. What are essential items? And so people will kind of bend the rules and they'll say, well, I need to go out and get my bread every day. You know, living in France, people want to get bread every day.
Near a bakery for the longest time.
What are essential items? There are shops in my area that are open and they just sell wine and beer and spirits, just basically wine shops, and they're open. There are chocolate shops in the area that are all open. I don't know what constitutes essential food. And in France, this ends up being a cultural thing because, you know, they consider fresh bread to be a kind of basic essential food. So there's grey areas, and people kind of, I don't know if you could say take advantage of those grey areas or just live within those parameters. But and there are other things, like you used to be allowed to go out for basic exercise, and it was for up to an hour, and it was within a 1 kilometre radius of your home. So you could go out, and so where I live in Paris, suddenly everyone started jogging, and just everyone in the street is just a jogger. Everyone's going around in athleisure wear, in their jogging gear, and like I've never seen so many joggers in this part of Paris in my life. Everyone's jogging suddenly. Then I think it was the beginning of this week, they imposed new restrictions saying that you're not allowed to do that anymore. And so,
oh really? Because they haven't updated the website, because the website still says, it's a bit contradictory. It says déplacement bref dans la limite d'une heure quotidienne. So they're saying short trips up to an hour.
But that's what for? To buy basic necessities, isn't it?
That's for your exercise.
Oh, okay. Because as far as I'm aware, that's been stopped. But maybe that's just Paris. I mean, to be honest, I get a lot of this information from my wife.
Right.
She is my primary source of information regarding all the rules and regulations.
Okay.
So I think that you're not allowed to do that anymore.
Right.
But maybe that's just Paris. Maybe because Paris, it's a bit different in Paris because obviously there are so many more people.
Yeah, you're just packed in.
Packed in, and there's a higher concentration of the virus here. So they've got to kind of take steps to try and, limit the spread here. Maybe that's like slightly different measures than in other parts of the country. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Also, you're allowed.
Then I think. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say you're also allowed to make trips to work as well. So you're allowed to travel to your office, but I don't know exactly how that's defined. Whether you're allowed to, if there are certain types of work which are considered to be vital and key workers, I suppose that key workers are allowed to do their stuff.
The government hasn't been clear on this, so it says on the website, so you can go to work if you can't do télétravail. So if you can't do remote working, lorsqu'ils sont indispensables. Okay, all right. When it's indispensable, and you can't do remote work. I'm sort of translating it very badly. But this hasn't been really clear for the government because loads of people are still working, and there is kind of a question mark over what is essential and non-essential, and it seems to be the same problem in the UK. So, this is really problematic.
My parents, I speak to them almost every day now, which is another kind of consequence of this. Another sort of like positive side. I think we're allowed to talk about the positive aspects of this.
Oh, for sure. I think we have cognitive dissonance. We can have, we can know that it's awful and also find moments of joy and gratitude to protect sanity.
And we must look on the bright side, because there's no need to make this any worse than it is. So we have to look on the bright side.
It comes back to sort of suffering like uselessly, like me feeling guilty about things I can't do anything about it.
Yeah, so it's worth saying that there are positive outcomes from this. That doesn't mean that we're denying the negative side of things. So one of the positive things for me is that it has weirdly brought my family closer together. Even though it's separated us geographically, like we would have gone to my parents' house this weekend. The three of us, my wife, me, and our daughter, we would have gone, and we obviously can't. And so that's a way in which it's dividing us. But we speak on Zoom almost every day, and that's my mum, my dad, my brother, and me, and my daughter, and my wife too, if she can. So kind of like every day we see each other and we talk to each other. So weirdly, how did I get to that point?
I don't know, but go with it.
I can't remember the reason why I cited that as an example.
We were talking about work.
Yeah, we were talking about work.
And what's essential, not essential.
Yeah, I was saying my parents always complain about the daily press conferences in the UK. And they say that the information is very vague, and they feel that the government is handling things very badly as well. So I was just saying that, we're talking about the French administration and how the communication that they've given to us has been a bit vague and so on. And it's the same in the UK, essentially. That's the point I was making.
Okay. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think this vagueness and I think, like I say, it's important to have compassion for people, even the people who are really not respecting the lockdown, weirdly. Because I think the governments didn't lead. And I think Boris Johnson, we were going to come on to him, but this is like l'exemple même, like, because he's still leading by bad example in this case, because they had already communicated that you're supposed to stop shaking hands. What does he do? He continues shaking hands, and he gets the coronavirus. So
he was bragging about it. I don't really understand that. I mentioned this on my podcast before, that before the lockdown was put in place in the UK, quite late, he was in press conferences bragging about how he was meeting all these coronavirus sufferers and shaking their hands and stuff. Why was he doing that? Why was he bragging about shaking everyone's hands?
It's so... I know I've heard people analyze it in terms of like it's sort of macho posturing, like it's showing that you're not afraid or something. Yeah. But it's really stupid. I mean, I wouldn't wish the virus on anyone, but on some level, I'm kind of like, it serves you right. But I mean, your behaviour.
But he's the Prime Minister. I mean, it's not just a personal matter of like, oh, no, not at all.
Yeah, no, he has to. You're supposed to lead by example. And if people see you shaking hands and at the same time there's information saying it's really serious, it causes confusion in people's minds at a time when they need things to be really clear, or as clear as possible with the latest information that we have. And
it's hugely dangerous for the country, for their Prime Minister to get the coronavirus. So it's not just like I'm Boris and I'm not scared of this, and having that kind of I'm a strong bloke approach, but also it's just not only irresponsible personally, but irresponsible in terms of the whole country, because now our leader is in intensive care.
Exactly, when you need someone to lead. I mean, as I said like you said, I'm also in touch much more with my mum and my brother. We were in a little WhatsApp group, and I texted them at the beginning of the week saying, 5, 6, or even 7 children could lose their father if something happens to Boris.
Yeah.
Because we still don't know how many children he has.
We don't know. And he's got another one on the way, of course. And he's got
another one. that is what makes it even more irresponsible. It's like, anyway.
Yeah. So I don't really understand what Boris was thinking when he did that, but I don't know if he was just sort of ideologically he'd taken the position of like, I don't know,
herd immunity, but was it, I don't get it. I think it's maybe a macho thing or a denial thing, a bit like Trump. I shouldn't even get onto that because
no, let's not talk about that.
That's not good. Yeah, like he's saying, I don't want to wear a mask like a sort of spoilt child. Anyway, it was summed up really well in a tweet by George Monbiot, who is a Guardian columnist. He said, the worst possible people in charge at the worst possible time, referring to Trump, Bolsonaro, Bojo, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I think that just sums it up perfectly.
Mm-hmm. So, all right, you get the impression that people in your town are not taking. Some people are not taking the lockdown seriously.
I'm maybe not being fair because it's really hard to judge when you just look out the window, and I don't know. People seem very chill, and it just is annoying for like I say, my partner has not been outside in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So when you're taking it really seriously, and then you see people just kind of like going for their little jog and.
I don't know. To an extent, I wonder if going out into the street as a general rule is a really bad thing. As long as you respect the distancing. So if you do run around the block a few times and you don't actually have any interaction with anybody and you keep your distance,
you're probably all right.
It's probably not that bad, but
yeah, maybe I'm being a bit harsh with people.
I don't know. I don't really know where I stand on it all, really, except that, I mean, for me personally, I just sort of struggle to know what to think, and I just try to keep my spirits up, and just, I've just got to. The main thing for me is like the first and foremost, I've just got to try and think, what am I going to do with my daughter all morning, and she's like, you've just got to. She's going to wake up in a minute, and then what? And then what am I going to do? She'll be awake in a minute. Like literally just before this call, just before we did this, she was having a nap, and like my wife came in to take over, which kind of means that I was lying down. Normally, I lie down with her so she can begin her nap. And then once she's asleep, I'll get up and then I can do some stuff. I actually do things because I can't really do anything when I'm with her because it's just quite high maintenance. You can't just leave her on her own.
Well, she is too. Yeah. Let's be fair. You're not like a helicopter parent.
No,
this
certainly
is a 2-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
So it's high maintenance. Yeah.
Totally high maintenance on a minute by minute level. It's getting better. It's definitely getting better as she's 2 and a bit. It's definitely getting better, and we have periods where we do leave her alone in her room at quiet time. I mean, the other day she was having quiet time, and I was like on my laptop trying to do some work, and I realised it had been a little while, and I noticed I hadn't heard her making any noise, and I was like, "Hello, what's going on?" And I thought, right, it's time for her nap anyway. So I went towards. There's like our bedroom on one side and her bedroom next to it. So I went towards our bedroom to kind of get the bed ready because she has her nap on our bed, and then I heard her in her bedroom going shh shh shh, which is this thing that she started doing, like when she doesn't want me to know what she's doing, she shushes me. It's weird. Okay. So she'll be like shh shh, meaning I don't know. I don't really get that. Maybe she's like shushing herself, or I think she means like don't pay any attention to me. I'm not. Just she shushes me as if to say, don't look at me, don't pay any attention to me, don't listen to me, never mind. So she was shushing me. And I was like, why is she shushing me? And I said, why are you shushing me? And I said, anyway, it's time for your nap. I went into her room. She was absolutely covered in Sudocrem, which is a kind of. Do you know Sudocrem?
Remind me what it is. It sounds messy.
You buy it in England. I don't think you can get it in France. So we always buy some in England. But it's basically a kind of all-purpose cream. You use it to deal with sunburn. You use it to deal with nappy rash. It's basically like a nappy rash cream. It's nice. It's a soothing white cream. and it's not really oily. It washes off quite easily.
Oh, it must be a bit like liquid paraffin or E45 cream or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's like E45 cream. It's a sort of a soothing cream that deals with skin complaints. So it's fairly harmless stuff. But anyway, she was totally covered in it. So it was all over her face. So her face was totally white with the stuff. It was all caked all over her face and caked all in her hair as well. And her hands were totally covered in it. And then some of the furniture in her room was covered in it as well. And I was like, what have you done? You know, and so, yeah,
that's
this
amazing.
just goes to show that you do need to, although
you do need to supervise them.
Yeah, you do need to keep an eye all the time. And sometimes
she wasn't just quietly reading War and Peace in a corner.
No, she was investigating the little pot of pseudochrome that we'd left on the side in her bedroom, and she'd like got her hands in it and all over her face. Because normally, you know, we rub it into her face or into different parts of her body. So she like all in her face and all in her hair. So that was a bit of a moment.
See, actually, this proves a point that my boyfriend mentioned. So I was like, oh, isn't it awful for the people who have kids? How are they going to cope? They have to homeschool them and all this, and they're all on top of each other all day long and blah blah blah. And he was like, you know what, woman, it would be cool to have a kid around because they're funny, like they do funny things, and that would cheer you up.
It's, you know, it's like, for me, it's always like a two-sided thing. Like like I said before, on one hand, it's like, you know, I just never get a moment to myself or get a moment to do my own thing. I mean, thankfully, because my wife and I, as I said, we're kind of like sharing the care with her. So while one of us is caring for her, the other one gets to do some work. But it's kind of like every like hour or every minute that you get on your own to do your work is suddenly very precious. And, you know, I'd quite happily, like my brother, for example, is on his own, which is not great, but also he's got all this time on his hands. And so I'm like saying to him, what are you doing with your time? He's like, oh, I don't know. I just can't read any books at the moment. I'm like, oh, I'd love to just be able to spend the day just reading one book all day. That would just be amazing. You know, I kind of like crave that. So again, I keep losing the thread of what we're saying.
So basically, like having a 2-year-old is quite like, it keeps you really busy. Having a 2-year-old and having to work.
So so basically, like that's my mental load is taken up by that, and I'm not able to kind of like really focus on the complicated sort of side of the moral side of. I haven't worked out basically where I stand on social distancing, where I stand on the government's position on it, where I stand on herd immunity. I just can't seem to get it together sort of on a moral level. Like, herd immunity is on one hand a horrible idea, which is basically the government saying, just let everyone get sick. So loads of vulnerable people will die. The NHS will be overwhelmed, you know, but ultimately the population will develop sort of immunity, and long term it'll be better. So, you know, I'm just sort of trying to balance on one hand, protecting the economy, and which is important, because if you let the economy go, then lots of people will suffer and die as a result of that. It's much harder to measure, but it will definitely happen. Whereas on the other hand, you've got the sort of short term thing of like, we must try to stop people getting this virus because this is going to make people suffer and die, and health workers will not be able to cope. And so it's kind of like, whatever you do, you're screwed. It feels like, I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe I'm wrong. I'm probably wrong because I haven't thought it through. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I wouldn't like. I don't know what to say. I think you have to just focus on getting through each day as best you can. And then if you have got a bit of bandwidth for those issues, why not? Why not? Maybe I've spent too much time looking at that side of things. I don't really know. But I mean, like, I definitely had to take breaks. Like the first weekend, I just turned my phone off for 2 days, like completely off. Yeah. There's sometimes where it's like too much. Anyway, but yeah, we've kind of covered that.
We've made that point now. Yeah. So
there's no point in going round and round. Anyway, yes. Moving on.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
Shall we talk about what our listeners might be doing during their confinement?
The lockdown. Yeah, exactly. This is where we can be useful, and this helps me deal with my guilt, because I've noticed that people really want to learn English. They're really looking for things to do. So I'm actually quite busy with that. And so we should just roll with that, I think.
I think so. What have you been doing then in terms of finding ways to help people improve their English in these conditions?
So I had this course up on the Udemy platform, which is an online course platform, and I've had a huge increase in enrollments in that time. And now I have over 21,000 students in the course. I mean, It's a free course, but yeah, so I went from like a few thousand to huge increases in March. Like one day I got like 9,000 students in a day, and I was just like, what the hell is this? Like, because I'd seen I'd got 700 in a day, and I was like, oh, did they add an extra zero or something? Or is this the right information?
There must have been some sort of administrative error.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, is this for me? I mean, it had a few thousand people on it, which is quite good, but it'd been like a slow burner. And then all of a sudden I got loads of enrollments, and it's great because I don't have to do any work, because I did the work already when I created it. Although I am doing a live class for the Udemy people next week.
So wait a minute, just tell us about the Udemy course then, and how people can find it. It's a free course.
Yeah, so it's got a really long title. It's Improve Your English Listening Skills with Movie Quotes. Improve your English listening skills with movie quotes. And it does exactly what it says on the tin. Okay. You improve your English listening skills with movie quotes, literally.
That sounds great.
Oh, it is?
Well, it is.
You should see the reviews. You should see. I'm getting more 1-star reviews now that it's got like 20,000. I had a bit of a panic about that, and then I just like calmed down, because I'm like, the reviews are overwhelmingly positive. And there seem to be some people who just go around Udemy courses leaving 1-star reviews with no comment, just for their own pleasure or something.
You never know. Some of those 1-star reviews with no comment, you just kind of think, is this just people trying to bring down the Udemy platform? You know, anyway.
Yeah, I try and, I'm like, okay, I've only got so much energy. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to be glad that people are enrolling in it and they want to do it and it's helping them, and that's all good.
But overall, very positive reviews. Okay, so learning how to learn. No, say it again.
Oh, Jesus, Luke. Right. Improve your English listening skills with movie quotes.
Yeah, I knew the rest of it. I just didn't know what the first word was.
It is very long.
Improve your English listening skills with movie quotes. Okay. Is it udemy.com?
Yeah, so Udemy is spelled, I used to pronounce it wrong, but it's spelled U-D-E-M. Is there an E before the Y? I don't remember.
It's your turn now. It's your turn to sound like you're
right. Udemy.com. So udemy.com. There we go.
udemy.com. Okay, and it's how to learn improve your English listening skills with movie quotes.
Yay! Well done.
Okay, well, I'm just searching for it now.
Okay, yeah, do that. And so I've done that, and I've created a little pop-up community for my newsletter subscribers on a messaging app. And what we're doing is we've done this twice now. We're basically having like watch parties. So the concept is, and you can do this with your real friends at home. You all agree to like watch the same thing at the same time in your house, and then you text each other about it. So like we've done it with movies. So if you go to the website, this is a really good resource, openculture.com. Hang on, let me just openculture, all one word.com. They have free movies online that you can stream, like, so it's not illegal downloading. It's like stuff that's just free anyway. And they have other things. They have like audiobooks and stuff like this, ebooks. But yeah, they have 1,150 free movies online.
Wow, that's brilliant. So
what we're doing with my group is we choose a movie. We all watch it, like we choose a time. We all start streaming the movie at the same time on our devices and where we are. And then we text each other about the movie in the group.
Wow, that's really cool.
So that's the concept. And it was really fun. So like, it's a total experiment. I was just like, we're just experimenting, and it's a small group, so it's fine. So last week we watched like a full length Cary Grant movie, right? And that was really exhausting, like an hour and a half. and they kept texting me questions about the movie and about the vocabulary and stuff. It was quite stressful. So I was like, right, we're going to change tack. We're going to do something a bit different. So today we did a short movie, a Wes Anderson short movie, really good, 8 minutes long. So we watched the movie together and then we texted each other, and that took about half an hour altogether, which was really good. And then we went off for lunch, like, obviously separately.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
So that's fun. That's a fun thing to do. So you could even do that with like your family or something.
And I guess a lot of people will be just basically, on Netflix, just thinking, right, where do I start? What shall I watch?
Yeah.
And we've talked about Netflix before. We did an episode about that. It was episode 523, which was called Tips for Learning English with Films and TV Shows with Cara Leopold.
Yeah. Well, I suppose everything, but all the wisdom and insight that I gave in that episode, like, it still kind of applies in the current situation.
Mm-hmm.
What could I add? So you can make the experience more communal, because I think we all need connection right now by creating watch parties and stuff with your friends. That can be a good laugh. And you can also like look for maybe groups online where people are discussing whatever you're watching, maybe on Facebook, to try and make it more of a connection thing.
Yeah.
And, something you can do. So a lot of students kind of resist this. Like, my own students have said to me, like, oh, I like your courses, but they're really hard and the dictations are hard. And I'm kind of like, well, that's how you improve. You have to work on things that are hard. If I only gave you easy stuff, you'd be like, this is a waste of time. So, but what I think is good about anything like that is it's very like mentally engaging and challenging. So it will like take your mind off other stuff right now. So yeah, I think like if you're kind of watching something and then maybe you go back and you work on a specific scene, or you find a clip online to work on something really short, then you can go in and like do a dictation. So just listen to a few seconds that were difficult, write what you hear, and then check with the subtitles. Like, that is something that you have to be 100% present and concentrated on that.
Mm-hmm. So
that stops your brain going off into an anxiety spiral, thinking about all the awful stuff happening right now. That could be quite nice, So it's hard, but at least like it diverts all your attention and energy, true. And you improve your listening skills. So
I was going to say, I could put it into two categories. There's the kind of, on one side, just sit back and Netflix and chill and just watch like some show, and maybe we can give some recommendations of things that people can just watch, and they just sit back, and it's not necessarily it's healthy for your English to just watch and get addicted and binge watch shows. It is good for your English, definitely, because you've got to get all that exposure in there. It's healthy.
It's immersion. Immersion.
Yeah, immersion. And we know that this is important. But on the other hand, also, if you really want to work intensively on your English and really sort of double down on improving your English and do it more quickly, then you've got to, be prepared to work hard on it and use techniques that you've talked about before. You talked about them in episode 523, as you said, like transcribing or repetition, working on a certain scene again and again and again. And people can, I'll probably share a summary of the points that were made in that episode at the end of this conversation. Yeah, I'll probably share that again. But so going back to the first category, then, just sort of Netflix and chill, which is actually a phrase which kind of means something else, doesn't it? So I don't know why I'm using that one, but Netflix and chill, Netflix and chill just basically means put on Netflix and then probably have sex with someone, right? Doesn't that what Netflix and chill mean? I'm 40, I'm 42 years old, so I'm probably too old, but. I'm 34. I'm not especially, I'm down with the kids or anything. Yeah. It's not really of my generation. Saying Netflix and chill is not really of my generation.
I'm even on the borderline of that, sounding really like, what's that old woman saying Netflix and chill for? You're the same age as my partner. He's 42.
Oh, really?
When were you born? 78?
77.
Okay, no, my partner's not 42 yet. He will be at the end. He will be in October. There you go.
Okay, so Netflix and chill. This is according to the Urban Dictionary, which is not reliable. But the top definition of Netflix and chill on the Urban Dictionary is something you tell your parents when you want your boyfriend or girlfriend to come over and have sex with you. For example, girlfriend, hey mum, my boyfriend's coming over to watch Netflix and chill. And mum goes, okay, sweetie, have lots of fun. And what it actually means is that they're going to have sex. Maybe I can find a better definition. Netflix and chill on Wikipedia. It's actually there's a whole Wikipedia page devoted to this phrase. Netflix and chill is an internet slang term used as a euphemism for sexual activity, either as part of a romantic partnership or as casual sex. So basically, if you say Netflix and chill, it just means come over and watch Netflix, but also, maybe have sex. So anyway, so I say Netflix. Yeah, I say Netflix and chill with a certain level of irony attached to it, but also I mean sit back and watch Netflix and just binge watch some TV shows without necessarily worrying about the whole studying point of view. So if people if people want to do that, shall we suggest a few things now?
So I would, but I don't actually have it.
Okay.
So we won't go into how I access my viewing things for my viewing pleasure, but I do have Canal Plus, and I don't know if there are some of the same things on both platforms, but a series I really like, I don't know if it's on, could you put it in the search bar, see if you can find it, is Better Things with Pamela Adlon in it. Really good series.
No, not where I am. So I'm accessing Netflix obviously from France. I don't use a VPN.
Oh, so they don't have everything.
They don't have everything, but they have a lot of stuff, but not everything. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's kind of one of the reasons why we don't have it, because there's stuff that will come out in the US and you're like, oh, that looks really cool, and then like on the French version it's like, nah, you don't get that.
What I can suggest to people though is simply this. Just people listen to my podcast because they are into British English, and normally they want recommendations for British stuff. Just go into Netflix if you've got it and just type British into the search bar, and then you will get loads and loads of options. You get British movies, British TV shows, British TV comedies, British British crime TV dramas, British detective TV shows, and more. And basically, I reckon if it's on Netflix, it's probably good. It's probably going to be a certain level of quality, and they generally filter out the total shite, don't they, on Netflix?
Okay, I would like to think so. And you know what? If you are not enjoying it, you totally have permission to quit and move on to something else. Yeah,
exactly. So there's stuff like when I just type in British, and I've not even selected British movies or TV shows or anything. I've just got some of these things. So one of them is Secrets of Great British Castles, which looks freaking brilliant. I mean, again, what I'm doing here is that this is torture for me, because I would happily spend my days watching all episodes of The Secrets of Great British Castles.
Oh, God, you big nerd.
But I can't. I'd love to watch that. It's like basically a historian, a modern one of these modern historians who's sort of young and likes to tell stories of battles and stuff. He goes around the country visiting some of the country's best castles, telling stories about what happened. And that's fucking brilliant. I love that sort of stuff. Like there was a big army of people camped outside this castle for 3 days, and they were trying to get in, but then they, all that sort of stuff. So there's The Secrets of Great British Castles. There's Dr. Foster, I've no idea what that's like, but it's got the girl from Killing Eve in it.
Oh,
the girl who plays Villanelle in Killing Eve, and she is brilliant. And I think it would be worth watching it just for her. She is absolutely fantastic. Another one is a show called Man Down, which has got Greg Davies in it.
That sounds familiar for some reason. I don't know why.
Greg Davies, and the tags for Man Down on Netflix are absurd, comedy, and British. I mean, Sounds perfect.
Oh, that sounds perfect. Yeah. Oh my God.
And it's got
1, 2, 3 jinx.
And it's got Greg Davies in it, and he's hilarious. Also, there are loads of stand-up comedy specials too on Netflix.
Oh, good. Oh, great. Well, you've got everything you need. Can I just be like a listening nerd for 2 seconds and just say the only issue with something like, what was it? This is where I'm going to forget the title, The Secrets of Great British Castles or whatever it was. Just like that's going to be a documentary, right?
Yeah.
So obviously you can just watch whatever you want for fun. Like nobody's going to judge. But if you want to understand like native speakers when they talk fast to each other,
right, then
a documentary is not the best thing. But then if like you want vocabulary to talk about castles because you like talking about that, like, go for it. But like, know that documentary language is not the same as conversational language,
Whereas something like Man Down with Greg Davies is probably more appropriate because it's more conversational dialogue and stuff.
We're probably getting closer to, a conversation, dialogue, exactly. Whereas a documentary is usually monologue unless they maybe interview people. But even then, it's not really like a... Anyway, I just wanted to make that point.
No, it's a good point. The best stuff is not even scripted dialogue, but actual authentic, unscripted, spontaneous speech between people is actually the best stuff that people should be listening to. But ultimately, the main thing is that listening to something is better than listening to nothing. And if you want to watch The Secrets of the Great British Castles, then do that rather than do nothing. And they've got other stuff. They've got like Top Gear. A lot of people like it. A lot of you don't, but a lot of people do, and it is there. Afterlife, the Ricky Gervais TV show, The IT Crowd.
I love The IT Crowd.
There's a lot of stuff like that. The Crown is there. True Grit, I didn't realise that was on there. True Grit is the Coen brothers film, a Western.
I don't think I've ever seen it, but I do like Coen brothers movies, so I'm sure it's good.
It's great, but actually from a learning English point of view, it might not be a good idea because it's got Jeff Bridges speaking in a fairly unintelligible accent. Jeff Bridges kind of speaking like this all the time. And so unlikely to be I couldn't understand anything he said while watching it, so I imagine our learners of English probably would struggle with it. But anyway, it's a good film, but there's loads of stuff.
You want a challenge,
if you want to learn how they spoke in the Wild West in the 19th century, then go for it.
It's the movie for you.
Right, I think we better call it a day before this episode becomes really long.
Really long. I'm actually very hot in my cupboard, and I think I'm running out of air. So
yes. Please do oxygenate yourself at all times. Okay, well, Cara, thank you very much for talking to me. And good luck over there, and stay well. Look after yourself. Take care, and all that.
Thanks. You too. Thank you for finding time in the day where you're trying to work and look after a 2-year-old and just keep things ticking over. It's not easy. So it's been good.
Yeah. Good to speak to you. And well, I guess people could check out Improve Your Listening Skills with Movie Quotes. Improve your English listening skills with movie quotes on udemy.com. They could have a look at that. Could be one of the things they could do. Okay, nice one. Well, have a nice evening, and have a lovely Easter weekend.
Oh, yes, of course. Thank you. You too.
Okay. All right.
Soon.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Okay, so thanks again to Cara for climbing inside a cupboard and staying there for the duration of our conversation in a bid to improve the sound quality on her side of this chat. Nice one, Cara. Thank you for doing that. As ever, listeners, you can leave your comments on the website. I'm curious where you stand on all of this. I mentioned before that I would sum up the main points that Cara and I made in episode 523 about using TV and films for learning English with and without subtitles. And I've decided to put all of that advice into a separate episode because I think that rather than kind of tacking it all on to the end of this conversation, it deserves to have a whole episode of its own. Plus, there will be people out there who would appreciate having all of the advice in one single episode. So that will be the next episode of the podcast, a summary of advice for using Netflix and, in fact, other platforms for improving your English, plus some more specific recommendations for shows and films that you can watch. By the way, don't forget Cara's free course on udemy.com called Improve Your English Listening Skills with Movie Quotes is available. It's completely free. udemy.com and then just search for Improve Your English Skills with Movie Quotes, or you can find the link on the page for this episode, of course. All right, now, before we end, let me just kind of add a few other little bits and pieces at the end here. So, an upcoming episode, not the next one, probably the one after that, or at least an episode coming soon. I recorded it also yesterday. So long-term listeners will remember that I have a cousin called Ollie. In fact, I've got 3 cousins, but I've spoken to Ollie on the podcast lots of times. He used to be on the podcast quite a lot until he moved to Bristol. So this is for the long-term listeners who've been listening for years. Do you remember my cousin Ollie? So he used to be on the podcast quite a lot until he moved to Bristol and I moved to France, and we didn't get the chance to see each other very often. Well, now he works for Netflix as a producer at their offices in Los Angeles. And now I keep talking about Netflix, but I swear I am not sponsored by Netflix, unfortunately. But Ollie moved to California a couple of years ago when he was offered a job at Netflix and he accepted it. And I recorded a conversation with him the other day about moving to America and what it's like working for Netflix. Yeah, being a British person living in America and working for a company like Netflix. So that episode is coming soon. Again, I'm not promoting Netflix. They don't need me to do that. But anyway, it was a good conversation that covers details of his work and the communication and cultural differences between the UK and USA. That's coming soon. If you enjoyed listening to this conversation with Cara about her experience of being on lockdown and stuff, if you enjoyed listening to that, and in fact, if you enjoy hearing about other people's experiences of living in lockdown in different countries, then I would like to recommend that you listen to several recent episodes of Zdenek's English podcast. You know Zdenek Lukas, he's an English teacher from the Czech Republic. I interviewed him on the podcast last year. He does his own podcast. It's called Zdenek's English Podcast. So he recently did 3 episodes of his podcast, which feature mini interviews with people in different countries. And it's great because he spoke to people in countries all around the world, all about their experiences of living in lockdown and, you know, what's going on in their countries. And I really recommend them. They're very interesting. He also interviewed me in episode 2. And we had a kind of similar conversation to the one that I had with Cara here, but obviously I do talk about other things and there's other stuff that you can hear. But anyway, I recommend all 3 episodes where you can hear people's accounts from different countries. It's very interesting and it kind of gives you a nice sense of what's going on around the world. Nice, is that the right word? I don't know. Anyway, you'll find links on the page for this episode, for those episodes of Zdenek's English Podcast, or you can just subscribe to Zdenek's English Podcast. That's spelled ZDENEK''S English Podcast. Just subscribe to that wherever you get your podcasts, and that's how you can listen to it. Some of you, no doubt, will be wondering when another episode of the Rick Thompson Report will arrive. Soon, I think. I've been talking to my dad regularly, but to be honest, we've just been focusing on normal family time stuff, just talking, you know, just as a family and spending our time just doing that. So we haven't really considered the idea of like recording a conversation for the podcast. And he was on the podcast recently. But anyway, I think he will be back soon to talk about what's been going on in his inimitable fashion, his clear and concise way. So there will be a Rick Thompson report coming soon, as usual. Okay, right. Well, anyway, that's it then. Thank you so much for listening to this. Do leave your comments on the website. The next episode, as I said, will be about will be a summary of advice about learning English with TV shows and films and stuff. Okay, so you can look forward to that one fairly soon. But for now, it's just time to, well, wish you all the very best. I hope you're basically doing okay. And I'll speak to you again soon. But for now, goodbye. Bye. 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 Thanks for listening to Luke's English Podcast. For more information, visit teacherluke.co.uk.